Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, My So-Called Healthy Life. Are we feeling refreshed today? Are we feeling positive? Are we struggling with the negative? Okay, so I am reading all of these meditations on a daily basis, and I'm in my office right now, and I keep several of my meditation books in my office. And one of my favorites is Daily Affirmations for Forgiving and Moving On, Powerful Inspiration for Personal Change by T.N. Dayton, PhD. And if you guys watched my videos from last week, I noticed that I had dog-eared some of the pages in here, which I never do in books. And so I was like, well, those must have been pretty profound meditations if I had done that. Well, I wasn't in my office, and so I didn't film on those days, and I didn't take the book home with me, which I had meant to do. So I wanted to go back today, and I wanted to read the one from May 15th, because I think it's really, really powerful, especially about talking a lot about negativity and toxicity, and how to be more powerful in our daily lives. So I'm going to read the meditation and then kind of apply it to my life, and that's how I use these daily meditations for on a daily basis, daily affirmations on a daily basis for me. So, connecting through positive. Today, I am no longer willing to sweat the small stuff. Years of working through each detail of my life, of making everything important and full of meaning, have taught me that it's just too intense and burdensome to live that way. I drive myself crazy doing this, as well as those around me. I know now that living without taking other people's inventories is the calmest, easiest way to get through my day. I also realize keeping the focus on myself does not necessarily mean that I have to think about myself all day. I have proven to myself that life has a way of working out if I let it. There are really only a few times in life when real crisis occurs. When I create crisis in order to feel alive, I experience only a very temporary electrical jolt. I can feel connected today through meditation and the gift of insight. I can experience love. I connect through the direct experience, meditation, and love. And the quote for the day is a Scottish proverb. If you be not ill like. I focus so much on being positive. And if you've watched my videos consistently, you'll know that several years ago, my husband and I went through a period where he would comment on a regular basis how negative I was. He'd say, like, God, you're just so negative. You look at the world, as half empty, not half full, which as a person in recovery, I think that is a tendency of a lot of alcoholics and addicts. But it wasn't a good enough excuse for me, and I wanted to live my life full of positivity on a daily basis. And what I noticed was that I would take anything and turn it into crisis or chaos. And part of the reason for that as an adult child of an alcoholic was that I grew up very much in chaos and crisis. So I actually am more comfortable in chaos and crisis. I function at a much higher rate in chaos and crisis. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but what I'm saying is that, like, I try to fix those problems, and then once they're fixed, I feel like there's value to my life, instead of just living in calm, daily peace and serenity. And if you watch my daily vlog, I talk on there a lot about what an amazing life I have, and that I'm so happy of the life that I have today, but I describe that very much as, being very simplistic, and going to sleep with my dogs at night, with my husband, and, just sitting around watching TV and going out to dinner with my husband, and those are the things that I really, really enjoy. And one of the things that I've really had to learn, which it mentioned in this meditation, I think is so powerful, is that in life, there are very few crises that actually occur, and I really, really believe that. To be more positive on a daily basis, one of the things that I started doing, and this is I think it's a really easy trick to use, is that when something happens to us that, let's say, is negative, right? Like maybe we get written up at work, or, somebody takes a parking space at the grocery store, or, we get a bill that we didn't expect, or somebody is terminally ill in the hospital and rushed to the hospital. No matter what the issue is, or if we ourselves get a very serious medical diagnosis, ask ourselves on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being it is not a crisis at all. There's not that much effort that I need to put into cleaning up this crisis, which for me would be very much like getting asked to go to the zoo. Like back in the day, because I have such horrible social anxiety, or I used to, that I would rate that at like a 2 or a 3, because to go out in public for me was really a struggle. Now I rate that as a 0 or a 1, especially if I'm with somebody that I feel safe with. But like a 10 back then would have been for me, you know, before my mother got ill and was in the hospital and passed away, before I went through major breakups in my life. Those would be not like, you know, breakups would probably be like 7, 8s. And looking back, I've learned so much from them, so they probably would be more like 7s. Really even like 6s maybe, you know? The death of my mother, that was a crisis. You know, it was, let's say, most people would say it was a 10, but I had 3 months with her while she was in a coma to say goodbye and have closure and all that kind of stuff. So really, in response to the world, it was an 8 or a 9. In my life, when I look back, I've only had very few 9 or 10 crisis moments. Now, what's interesting about that is, I think for a lot of us that lean to the negative, not to the positive, we live in 9-10 constantly, if that makes sense, where we're constantly looking at things as a crisis. And so every moment, it's like, oh God, not this. Oh my God, my life is miserable. I can't believe this is happening. And then after a while, what happens is, it becomes a language to us. It becomes this very negative, daunting language that just holds us down and affects the people around us, and really nobody wants to be around us when we're talking like that, right? And so what I had to do is I had to change my language, and I had to start looking at crises different, and I had to start, you know, realizing that a lot of what I perceived as a crisis was actually not a crisis, not at all. And I really had to like kind of look at this and go, you know what, this is not that big of a deal, okay? Like, bills that I couldn't pay, I'd be like, well, I can call and I can try to figure out what I can do with them to work this out, but like, I'm not going to let it ruin my life, right? And, you know, that was another question that I had to ask myself, like, in today, like, if today was my last day on earth, how important would this crisis be to me? You know, because none of us know when it's our last day. And so when you look at the world that way, and you look at it as like, wow, like, how big of a deal is this crisis to me in the grand scheme of things, you realize how very small a lot of it is. And then what it forces you to do is start seeing things in a more positive way. Because if you're not looking at the negative, you're forced to look at the positive. And then you start living through positivity, where you notice things like your dog running in the grass, and, you know, falling asleep, and just the feel of the pillow, or, you know, waking up and it's sunny outside instead of raining, or if it's raining because you like rain, or, you know, or just the moments where you get to sit around with family and friends and how enjoyable that is. And you really start noticing those positive things, and you start getting attracted to those positive things, and then your language changes. And it's really all about changing the language from negative to positive. And that, for me, has been profound. But it took a lot of work. I, like, really had to work on it, you know? And I said to the people in my life, when you hear me being very negative, please stop me in my tracks and say, hey, Peter, you're being really negative. And then I would have to take a look at that and go, okay, what's going on today in my life that I'm leaning towards the negative? Because most times when I go into crisis mode, it's because I feel unsafe, or I feel like something's out of my control and I have a need to control it. So I revert back to those behaviors that I had when I was a child growing up, which is crisis mode and chaos, that I know how to function. And that's not a healthy place for me to function today, and I don't want to be negative. So, you know, every day, my, you know, goal for the day is, when I wake up, to, of course, be, you know, a better version of myself than I was yesterday, but also to be very, very positive and be a positive influence in the world. So I hope you guys got something from that meditation. I hope you relate to it, and I will be back tomorrow. I love you guys. Bye.